So for question 1, I filled out all of the octagonal number of dots, finding the pattern. I found the pattern was 3n squared minus 2n. I filled out all the decagonal numbers of dots, and I found the pattern was 4n squared minus 3. I found this equation because I saw the pattern between these two equations. I then filled out the p-gonal number of dots, and I found that the equation was p over 2, p divided by 2 minus 1, n squared, as seen here, because 6 divided by 2 would have been 3 minus 1 would have been like this 2, the 8 divided by 2 minus 1 would be 3, and the 10 divided by 2 minus 1 would be 4, so that's how I found that part of that equation. And then the other part was the p over 2 minus 1 times n, because the number connected to the n was 1 less than the one connected to the n squared. For these questions, here I found, for the Euclidean geometry, I just found the midpoint between the 2 points, which should be located here. For the taxicab geometry, I found that the gas station and the polyies are 8 units from each other, and half of that would be 4. So from each point, the gas station and polyies, I went out 4 units and then made the grids of the taxicab circles, and they overlapped in these 5 points here. So the gas station could be at any of these 5 points. Here, the point where a gas station could not exist would be right next to polyies, or why a park would not exist, then the gas station would have to be right next to polyies, because in taxicab geometry, points can only be at intersections. So you wouldn't be able to find a halfway point between polyies and the gas station if they're right next to each other, because it would be halfway between 2 intersections, and there are no halves in the taxicab geometry. Finally, question 3. For using Euclidean geometry, I used the Pythagorean theorem and used this right triangle, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and found the hypotenuse, which would be the distance from my yacht to the treasure, should be 370 miles. How far is the yacht to the treasure using taxicab geometry? I found that by counting how many miles it would take to get from the yacht to the treasure chest, like straight across the grid, which would be the same amount as long as I'm traveling northwest all the way up. The shortest routes will always be 26 miles. And finally, to find how many different paths there are to get to the treasure, I used a method using Pascal's triangle to find how many paths there are to get to each point. I ran out of room, so in this 7x7 square bolded here is actually here, where I fill out the rest of the numbers, and I ended up getting that there are 1,677,452 paths to get from the yacht to the treasure chest.